Zanarino. I mean, Zanarino. Two things I want to discuss before we get to this passage. The first thing is the role of what Michael Heiser calls the Satan, which we commonly call Satan. And he says that this is an office. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because it deserves a lot of time. But if you haven't heard that before, it might be worth it to look up Michael Heiser and watch his videos on this. There's a lot of videos about it. It's really interesting. And it's that the role of the Satan or the role of the Satan as an accuser can be occupied by different beings at different times, as long as they take on that role. Take that with a grain of salt. My memory might not be the hottest on that teaching, but it is really interesting. He sees it as an office, and that may very well be the case. The second thing to understand is this. I have some technical difficulties I'm struggling through with my phone right now, so I have to keep this brief whether I like it or not. The second thing to understand is this. The church did not distinguish itself from Judaism at first. If you read Acts, the part of the persecution they were going to go through was that they were going to continue to go to the synagogues and worship there, okay? And so they are, and you see that all over Acts, that they haven't come to the conclusion that they're going to have to distinguish themselves from Judaism yet, all right? So those two things are important to keep in mind as we go to this passage. So this is chapter 2 of Revelation, starting in verse 8. All right. And to the angel of the church in Smyrna, write the words of the first and the last, okay, who died and came to life. This is important. Now you may go, well, we know who that is. That's Jesus, talking about the resurrection. True. But look at who they're talking to here, okay? I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. So it appears, I could be wrong, but I think it's possible they have either been kicked out of this synagogue or they're being persecuted by the Jews at the synagogue. And it says they're not Jews. They're not Jews, and that they are a synagogue of the accuser. They're also impoverished and going to be further persecuted. But keep in mind, it says, the angel of the church in Smyrna write, the words of the first and the last who died and came to life, right? So it's like, okay, you already have the victory in hand. Now, it's easy to say that, but they're experiencing this persecution. They're facing the accuser here. However, they have to keep in mind that the battle's been won. Now go down to 10. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have tribulation. So 10 days. Now this is remember we've talked about prophecy. The role of prophecy sometimes is to interpret the future as well as predict it. So it's not just about prediction. It's about interpretation. So as they're going to sit in prison, they are to interpret it. And what else does prophecy do? It comforts. So they've got 10 days. So on day one, why should they fear if they know in 10 days they're going to be released? Why would you? If you got a prophecy from God saying, hey, you're in prison, but this is only going to last 10 days, you wouldn't fear it? You'd be like, yeah. Now, again, additionally, the one who has conquered death is on your side. You're on your side. Those who would appear to be godly, the Jews, aren't even Jews, number one, right? And number two, they're taking on that role of accusation as they're supposed to because they're part of the world. So you're doing it right. So this church in Smyrna, although all of the outward decor and all the outward look, the struggling, the tribulation, the starving, the poverty, the outside world would say, well, they're accursed. But that's obviously not the case. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Now here's where it gets good. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. Is it saying they're going to die? Maybe. But it's just saying to be faithful. So tribulation for 10 days, don't fear. It could be at the end of those 10 days, they'll be killed, right? But it says not to fear. What's the basis of not fearing? Not death, right? Why? This is where it gets really, this is a big point in Revelation. This is why I said yesterday, you want to complete the book of Revelation because you'll learn more. It's not wrong, by the way, just to teach these first 7 churches and so forth. That's not necessarily wrong. It's just incomplete. Verse 11, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. They shouldn't fear because by conquering, they'll see that they have overcome the second death. What's the first death amount to? Death of the flesh. Who cares? In the big spectrum of things, we're talking about the second death. And how does one overcome that? Well, faithfulness. God is going to hold them faithful. So now this issue of the second death has to be kept in mind as we go through the book of Revelation. At other times it will come up. So you have the first life, right? Then the second life. So your first life is your birth life. It's not worth much in the end if we're talking about eternal things. But the second life is eternal life. So the first death is, again, there's a birth of the flesh and a death of the flesh. The second death, first death doesn't matter that much if you aren't going to suffer the second death, which is the spiritual death. So the birth of the flesh, the birth of the spirit, the death of the flesh, the life, the overcoming the death of the spirit. That's not a statement about universalism or being extinguished or issues about heaven and hell. It's simply saying that you want the spiritual life. Also, the already and not yet, which I don't know if I've discussed, but already and not yet is this. They already have the spiritual life. It's already there. So they don't have to fear the second death because they already have the spiritual life. So they are in some sense, and I know I did say this at one time, they are in some sense already resurrected. So what is there to fear? Okay, so the already and not yet is what that is. Some things are true already, even though they haven't come to pass yet. All right. Zany.